We're going to switch over and look at the somatic nervous system in this lecture. In the somatic nervous system, there's just one neuron between the central nervous system and the effector organ, and we call that motor neuron the lower motor neuron. The effector organ that the lower motor neuron is going to innervate is skeletal muscle. And so what's very different about the somatic nervous system from the autonomic nervous system is that the somatic nervous system is under mostly voluntary control. So you can think that you want to raise your hand and you can go ahead and do that. So that's very different from the autonomic nervous system, which is mostly involuntary control. And then I also have a picture down here at the bottom just showing the other difference. Somatic nervous system going from the central nervous system out to the skeletal muscle, you just have this one lower motor neuron. And then the autonomic nervous system, remember that there are two neurons to get out to the target organ from the central nervous system. So you've got that preganglionic neuron and that postganglionic neuron. And this is a picture down here of the parasympathetic nervous system because you've got a long preganglionic neuron and a short postganglionic neuron. And as far as the anatomy of the somatic nervous system, the cell body of the lower motor neuron is going to be in the ventral horn of the spinal cord, or it could be in the brainstem. And that's really different from the autonomic nervous system, where the cell body of the preganglionic neuron will be in the lateral horn instead. And the neurotransmitter that's going to be released by this lower motor neuron to talk to the skeletal muscle will be acetylcholine. And the acetylcholine will bind to nicotinic cholinergic receptors, which will be located on the skeletal muscle cells. So that would be really important to know for the exam because probably will ask you that. All right, so here's just a picture of what we were talking about. So in the spinal cord, we've got the cell body of the lower motor neuron located in the ventral horn, part of the gray matter of the spinal cord. And it's going to exit through the ventral root, come out that spinal nerve, and then make its way to the skeletal muscle and then innervate those skeletal muscle cells. Okay, another really important concept to know is what a motor unit is. So one somatic motor neuron is going to innervate many skeletal muscle cells, also called muscle fibers. And the reason these skeletal muscle cells are called that is because the skeletal muscle cells are really long and skinny, and so they look like fibers. So that's the other name for a skeletal muscle cell. You'll see them called muscle fibers. But each skeletal muscle cell or muscle fiber is innervated by only one lower motor neuron. So a motor unit is defined as one lower motor neuron plus all of the skeletal muscle fibers that it innervates. So let's take a look at some pictures here. So here we've got two different motor units we're looking at. So the first motor unit, we've got this lower motor neuron, and it's going to be innervating all of these different skeletal muscle cells down here. And so all of these skeletal muscle fibers and this lower motor neuron, that would make up one motor unit. So when this lower motor neuron has an action potential and releases neurotransmitter, all of these skeletal muscle fibers that it innervates will all contract at the same time as one unit. So that's why they call it a motor unit. Okay, and then the other motor unit is innervated by this other lower motor neuron and includes all of these skeletal muscle fibers that are being innervated by this other lower motor neurons. So this would be the second motor unit. And so they would all contract together when this other lower motor neuron has an action potential and releases neurotransmitter. Okay, a lot of times though, the motor units, the muscle fibers that they innervate are kind of mixed together. So this is probably a better representation of things. So you can see that there are 3 different motor units here and they're color coded. So you can see there's one lower motor neuron here in red, and it's innervating these red skeletal muscle cells here, and that would be one motor unit. And then there's another motor unit here in light purple, and then a third motor unit here in blue. And so these would actually take turns contracting. So one motor unit would contract while the others are relaxing, and then that one would relax, another one would take over and contract. And that way you can have your movement be continuous and not be contracting all at once and then relaxing all at once, because then you would drop things if you were carrying something. So they kind of rotate and take turns to relax and contract.